Hello, I'm Amy Zadelka. I'm an assistant professor in the Faculty of Management, and as you heard from Kim, I, along with Dr. Hilary Layton, will be facilitating your retreat on November 17th. I'm recording this video to give you an idea of what to expect when you come to the retreat, and I'm also recording it because I'm hoping that you'll submit something to me by the end of this week to help with the planning of the session. As you sign Kim's email, the day will open with breakfast, and then Hilary will lead you in an exercise that will bring you into the day and allow you to get to know everybody better. You're a big group, and Hilary's goal is to deepen your knowledge of your coworkers and maybe even deepen your knowledge of yourself. She has some pretty great exercises planned. After Hilary brings you into the day, I'm going to launch into what we'll be doing for most of the day, and that will be creative problem solving, or CPS. Our goal in dedicating a day to CPS is twofold. So for one, Bill asked me to do this because it can be helpful for everyone who works in an office to have a common process and language around how to approach tricky challenges. In fact, as many of you know, Bill used to work at Sheridan College, and at Sheridan, which branded itself as a creativity school, most of the staff, including Bill himself, were trained in CPS. So one reason we're going to be focusing on creative problem solving on November 17th is so that you'll be able to learn an approach that will serve you as an individual and as a FOM team member in terms of how to navigate complex challenges. Another reason we will be doing this on Thursday at the retreat is so that you can actually spend the day working on a challenge or an opportunity that is of interest to you. So we won't just be learning CPS, we'll be using CPS to address an issue that you collectively want to address. What Bill has said to me is that he wants this day to be about you, and he wants it to be an opportunity for you to discuss issues that matter to you. He also said that he is committed to acting on the outputs from this meeting. So my goal in recording this video is to provide you with enough background for you to be able to send me suggestions as to what you believe the topic of conversation should be on November 17th. What issue, what challenge are you facing, or what opportunity do you see that we might use as a focal point on the 17th? What kind of challenge would be a good one to propose? For one, it's helpful to look at how we can classify challenges. And so challenges can be either heuristic or algorithmic. Heuristic challenges are open-ended. That means they have many possible solutions. There's no one right answer. Whereas algorithmic problems have a single right answer, even though that might be very, very difficult to come to. When we're doing creative problem solving, we're always dealing with heuristic, open-ended problems that require imagination. And so, when you are thinking about what you might propose for Thursday, think about something that's open-ended, that requires imagination. Now, within that, I'm using the word problem, but actually a problem can be a predicament or an opportunity. So a predicament is when something is not going the way we would want. So we want to solve it because there's a problem for us. So for example, how can we improve morale? The assumption there is that there's an issue with morale that needs to be improved, right? So that's a predicament, and you can see on the slide that would be that the approach would be reactive. There's something went wrong, we're reacting to it. But equally important are opportunities. This is where nothing is going wrong, everything is going well, but we can see how it can be even better. So we're taking a proactive approach. So something like, how can we leverage everyone's talents, or how can we more fully leverage everyone's talents on the job? That would be an opportunity that we might address. So when you're thinking about submitting something for discussion, please think about both predicaments and opportunities. Creative problem solving was invented a long time ago. It's over 50 years old. And so now we have things like appreciative inquiry, which ask us to take an appreciative approach and not name things as problems, but rather look at what's going right. And perhaps if CPS were invented today, that would be built in. So the language of CPS is to talk about problems. However, I would urge you, as you think about this, to think about challenges being not just problems, but also opportunities. Another tool to help you think about what challenge or opportunity you might submit is something called the 4 I's. So if you look at the slide, what you'll see is the 4 I's are imagination, interest, influence, and immediacy. So in thinking about what's a good challenge for creative problem solving, you think, 1, does this challenge require imagination? As I mentioned, if you can address this with plain old analytical thinking, well, it's more efficient for you to do it that way. So something that requires imagination is typically a challenge that has come up again and again, maybe, and that you don't quite understand why. You think that it should have been easier to address than it has. Another is interest. If the people in the room are not interested in addressing this challenge, there is very little chance that something interesting will come out of the session. Influence. This means the people in the room need to have at least some influence over the situation. And that might be the influence to advise to someone else. However, you shouldn't be posing a challenge like, how can marketing do better? Or how can another department in the university do better? This should be something that either you yourselves can act on changing, or you can say, well, with Bill's help or with somebody in a position of power, with their assistance, we can influence the situation. So, but the closer to your sphere of influence, the better in terms of this being an effective process. And last is immediacy. That does not mean that you're dealing with only short-term problems, but it means that you should be ready to take some action step within the near future on whatever it is that you're discussing. So as you're thinking about what to submit, think about, does this challenge or opportunity require imagination? Is it interesting? Do we have the influence to make a difference here? And are we ready to do something in the relative short term? Let's look at some examples of possible topics we could discuss on November 17th. I'm providing these examples not to put limits on your imagination in terms of what you might propose, but rather to get your thinking started. So one example is the one that I brought up just a moment ago. How might we further leverage talents that don't show up in people's job descriptions? So if we chose something like this, that would mean that we would spend the day really looking at, okay, how do we provide everyone with the room to further develop themselves in ways that perhaps are beyond their jobs? Another example that came up when I was talking to some of the staff in preparation for making this video, what can we do to increase a sense of belonging and engagement in FOM? Another one, how might we streamline communication with students? This is something that came up again from a staff member. Another one, how can we determine what the right level of support is to provide to students? And someone brought this up as an example as well. And I think what this person was getting at was FOM's staff in general are really motivated to help students, and yet sometimes is it possible we overhelp? Sometimes might we be helping to the detriment of students learning to do things on their own? So that's where this question came from. Here's what I'm asking. Please submit your ideas to me by Friday at 4 p.m. That way I can look at them over the weekend and get everything prepared for next week. The question is, what challenge or opportunity do you think we could spend the day exploring? Now, I'm going to explain this a bit more, but first let me get the logistics out of the way. Number one, you will email that to me. There's my email address, amy.zadelka@royalroads.ca. So email your ideas to me. Your ideas are confidential. I will not speak to anyone about anything you have sent in the email. However, clearly because you are sending this by email, it's not anonymous. And the reason it's not anonymous is because I might want to write back and ask you a few questions or try to get at the core of what you're saying. So anything you send will be kept confidential. However, clearly I will know who has sent the email. Here are a few more considerations as you consider what to submit. First of all, don't worry about it not being the right question or challenge or opportunity. Whatever you submit will be great because part of the process we will go through on Thursday, it will involve reframing the question. So in a way, whatever question we ask or whatever challenge we put forward, we are going to dig into it and ask, is this really the challenge we should address? So it doesn't really matter if you frame it perfectly because we will be revisiting that. That's a big part of the process, is questioning the question itself. Another point to remember is sometimes a personal question has universal application. So for example, what if you are in one department of FOM and you are dealing with something that seems very specific to you? Send it anyways, because it might be that at the core of what you're looking at, for example, it might be about interdepartmental relationships. And even though you're talking about interdepartmental relationships or faculty staff relationships or whatever, even though you're talking about it in your specific context, there might be other people who write in and are pointing to a similar issue in their context. So please send it in anyways, even if it seems personal. You might write to me and say, I like one of the examples that you brought up in your video, and you can tell me which one that is. Those examples that I used were from conversations with staff, so you might just say that you like one of those. That's fine. Also, clearly, although I am soliciting your input, please be aware that, of course, we're not going to use all the challenges. So what's going to happen once I get them is I'm going to look at them, and if something jumps out and it's clear to me that this would be a perfect way for us to explore CPS if we use this specific challenge, then I'll go ahead and make a decision that we'll use it. On the other hand, I might recontact everyone on Monday, put everything in a doodle poll, and call a vote and see, okay, we've received 10 different suggestions. Which would you be most interested in spending a day exploring? That's all for now. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. Please, please, please submit your ideas to me, amy.sadalka@royalroads.ca. This is such a rare opportunity to come together for a day, and this day is about you. Help me create something that will be of the greatest interest to you and will best serve you. All right, I look forward to working with you next week. Thank you.